one is born a hero. Every person in this book had a moment when they were scared, terrified, like you, like me. So how did they achieve what they achieved? Because whatever their dreams were, big or small, for their country, for their family, or even for themselves, they never stopped fighting for what they loved.
Brad Meltzer is a New York Times best-selling political thriller novelist. He is a nonfiction writer, a TV show creator, an award-winning comic book author. Most of all, he is a dad. Brad says that sometimes you're given a moment. What matters is what you do with it. This is the underlying theme in two of his nonfiction works, Heroes for My Son, and the one we will be discussing today, Heroes for My Daughter.
Heroes for My Daughter is a dream to me. It's not even a book. And it started on the night my daughter was born. And on that night, my heart truly doubled in size. And I think like most dads, you want the best for your daughter. So when my daughter was born on that night, I'm a writer. I want to write a book for her. A book that lasts her whole life. And one day I can present it to her and truly she'll think, when she reads the great advice I have for her, she'll think I'm the greatest dad in the whole world. I had the parade planned for myself. It was going to be great. But the truth was I knew nothing about being a dad. And then I heard stories like this one of Sally Ride. That Sally Ride, America's first female American astronaut in space, why didn't NASA pick her? People know who she is, but why her? And some people say it's because she's a physics genius, and others say it's because she's a great athlete, others that she's fearless. And those are all true. But here's what also had to happen, is Sally Ride had to see an ad in her college newspaper, and she had to answer it looking for volunteers. She had to see an opportunity, and she had to seize it. And to me, that is a key lesson I want my daughter to have. I said, that's the book I want to write for my daughter. A book not just of rules, but a book of heroes.
Because this book is a collection of individuals that you picked, what common characteristics did you find among them?
Oh, it's interesting. When I started, I had one thing with the book, and that was I wrote Heroes for my son, and now I was going to do Heroes for my daughter, The books were going to be the same. There's no hero in Heroes for My Son that I couldn't put in Heroes for My Daughter. I said they're going to be the same exact book. And when I handed the book in, my editor said to me, we have one problem. I said, what's the problem? She said, you keep using one word over and over in this book for your daughter. And I said, what's the word? She said, fighter. She said, you use the word fighter in over a dozen entries. You use the word fighter in the Dalai Lama's entry. He's a pacifist and you call him a fighter, which I guess shows you, one, my lack of command of the English language. But here's what I don't apologize for, is I want my daughter to learn how to fight. I want her, when she wants something, that she knows she has to fight for it. And if she sees injustice, she should fight harder than she's ever fought before. I tell her all the time, don't be the princess waiting for the prince to come rescue you. You can rescue yourself. And that was vital to me. But as for that one thing, yes, the fighter was in every hero. But the one thing that I realized, no question, over and over in every hero, is there's only one thing you need to be a hero. You have to help someone. That's it. That's the answer. You just have to help someone.
And one other common characteristic that I seem to pick up from your books is there's a knock on the door and it's called opportunity, and you have to act on that opportunity or it may never come again.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, all the time, one of my favorite stories, I'll give you one that's not even in the book, it's Jim Henson. Okay, you create Kermit the Frog, you're my hero. But you're not a hero just because you're famous. That doesn't make you anything. I tell my daughter all the time, I said, you know what, being a famous athlete makes you nothing. You know what it means to be a best-selling author? Nothing. It just means people buy your books. An athlete means you're good at sports. That doesn't make you a hero. But Jim Henson creates Kermit the Frog. But here's how he got his start. He wanted to be a newscaster, actually. And he went to get the job as a newscaster. They said, we're not hiring. And he left all dejected, feeling really sad. On the way out, he sees an ad up on the wall. And it says, we're looking for puppeteers. And so he goes to the library, he takes out books on puppets, and he comes back to the same exact spot and he says, I'm a puppeteer, can I have a job? They gave Jim Henson 5 minutes, that's all he needed. But to me, that's the lesson, right, is that when you see a roadblock in your way, you must go around it. You must, as you said, seize that opportunity. And I want my daughter to learn that lesson.
And never, never quit.
Never, oh, never. One of my favorite stories over and over in the book, there's a story in there about young Alexandra Scott. She goes by Alex. And Alex, when she was barely a year old, she was diagnosed with cancer. And that was the only life she knew. Chemotherapy and surgery and sickness. And when she's 4 years old, she says she wants to open up a lemonade stand in her front yard. She doesn't want to use it to buy toys for herself. She wants to take the money and give it to doctors to help other kids with cancer. Within a single day, Alex's lemonade stand raises $2,000. But here's what I love, is suddenly other lemonade stands start opening up, all with Alex's name on them. And then she sets a new goal. She says, let's raise $1 million. On June 12, 2004, hundreds of lemonade stands open up in every state in the country. Ordinary people selling water and sugar and lemons to help kids with cancer. Nearly 2 months later, Alex dies. She's 8 years old when she dies. Her parents are holding her hands as she dies. And she says right before she dies that next year's goal should be $5 million. To this day, Alex's lemonade stand has raised over $45 million. It is still going strong. One girl, one idea, one big dream. That's a hero for my daughter.
Oh boy, that says it all, doesn't it? Let me ask you before we specifically go to some of the heroes, how do you envision heroes may change for girls over the next 20 or 30 years?
You know, I think it's interesting. There's actually been a lot of talk right now as to what it means to be a mother. What does it mean to be successful? Can a woman have it all? You know, that's the phrase, right? Can a woman have it all? And I think it's a fascinating debate. But I realize, as much as I want to say my son's no different than my daughter, I'm going to absolutely treat them the same, my daughter, just by being a woman, is going to have a harder life. She just is. The facts are there, right? Women earn less. They're, they have to deal with other things that men will never deal with. My son will never have to deal with that work-home balance. And, you know, a friend of mine was telling me as I was reading this article recently that women, are concerned more and work harder and worry more and stress more over are they putting enough time in their family and compared to how their job is. And no matter how great a dad I want to be, men just don't do it and sweat those details like women do.
That's right.
And I think that in a strange way, I think the hero that we're going to see as we go forward in the next 20 years are those women who have figured out that and who have figured out how. And you know what I think the other part of the answer is? It's we're going to also see people respecting the heroes who are at home with us. You know, one of the heroes who's in this book is my grandmother. And my grandmother died actually in the past year. And she died as I was putting this book together for my daughter. And it was a really emotional time. My grandmother, when my grandfather died, my family said, oh, she'll never go on. She loved him too much. And she went on for over 20 years. And then she went blind, and they said she'll never go on. And she went on. And then she went deaf, and they said she'll never go on. And she went on. And I used to go to her, go visit her on the weekends, and I'd yell into her hearing aids. I'd say, nah, how you doing? She'd always say the same thing. She'd say, oh, I'm fine, darling, I can't complain. And I'd say, are you kidding me? I said, you're blind and you're almost deaf and you're a widow. How could you not complain all day long? But to her, she had everything because she had a family. And that is a great hero. You know, we forget those, we always focus on these big heroes, but we forget these heroes who are at home. They're sometimes the best heroes of all.
Now, your grandmother, as I recall, is the person who always would say, see you later, not goodbye.
Yeah, I know she did. Every time you left her, I'd say, bye now, and she'd always say, no, see you later. I'll see you later. And so on her headstone, when we just unveiled it, it says, never goodbye, darling, on her headstone. And that's one of my favorite heroes in the book, but I can tell you and your viewers, the best hero in the book is on the last page. Because the last page of Heroes for My Daughter is blank. And it says your hero's photo here and your hero's story here. And I promise you, you take a picture of your mother or your grandmother, a military member of your family, a teacher, and I promise you, you put their picture in this book, you write one sentence of what they mean to you, that's the most important hero and Heroes for My Daughter. And again, to go back to your question, to me, in 20 years, I want to see more people recognizing that hero who they live with is sometimes the best hero of all.
The heroes for my daughter would be my parents. We came to this country in 1966, and my parents came over with 5 small children, all under the age of 7, with nothing but a suitcase with whatever clothes that we could bring. And when we came here, we lived in my aunt's 2-bedroom apartment for 3 months until my parents, both of them, could find a job and save enough money so that we could get our own apartment. So for me, they're my heroes, and I would hope that my daughter would feel that they would be her heroes too. We struggled for many, many years and were able to eventually, my parents were able to buy a home for us, and they wanted us to come to this country so that we would have a better life and a better education. And myself and my siblings were a testament to that, because we are all successful in our own right. We own our own homes. We're all married. We've got children. We all have great jobs. And I think we owe all of what we have today to my parents.
One of the heroes that I would choose for my daughter is Mae Jemison. She was the first African-American female astronaut, and she traveled on the Space Shuttle Endeavour. In addition to being an astronaut, she's a professor, a Peace Corps volunteer, an entrepreneur, and a physician. And she combines two of the traits that I see in my daughter already. She loved to dance, and my daughter loves to dance. And she also loves technology and nature and science, and my daughter loves getting out in nature and exploring nature. So she's a great role model for those reasons. She also continues to work to inspire African American students to study science and technology. And she points to the long history of African American inventors and scientists in American history to help inspire African American students to continue to study science and technology. Her hero was Martin Luther King Jr., and she has said, when I think of Martin Luther King Jr., I think of attitude, audacity, and bravery. And those are all traits that I think I would like my daughter to have as well.
All right, let's start at the beginning of the book, and I'm going to pick a number of the different heroes that you have portrayed, and we'll talk about them.
Sure.
You begin the book with Marie Curie, you know, the first woman who really, as a scientist, wins the Nobel Prize. Please tell us why you start here and what the significance of her story is.
You know, it's funny. The reason she's the first hero in the book, I started by saying I wanted a woman. It had to be a woman, of course, right? It's Heroes for My Daughter. Started with a woman. I have men in here. There's Christopher Reeve is in the book. Abraham Lincoln's in the book. Gandhi's in the book. Heroes for My Daughter must open with a woman, right? This was all the symbolism of it was to me why we picked her. And I had heroes like Audrey Hepburn, who I love. I think is great and a great model, but I didn't want to start with someone who was known for her looks and her beauty. I wanted my daughter to have someone who was focused clearly on her brain. So the reason she got picked is the two heroes that were going to be the first ones in the book was Sally Ride and Marie Curie. And it was my daughter who picked it. Oh. And I told her the stories. I said, here's Sally Ride. Here's America's first female astronaut in space. She had to see an opportunity. She had to seize it. Here's her story. And she did what no woman had ever done before. And then I told her the story of Marie Curie. And I said, Marie Curie, when she won her first Nobel Prize, she could have stopped. When her husband died, she could have stopped. When they said, you don't need to teach anymore, she could have stopped. When she won her second Nobel Prize, she could have stopped. And even when she was dying from cancer, from the radiation that she was researching, her own research killing her day by day, she still never stopped. She could have stopped at any point, and she never, ever, ever stopped. And we all benefit for that to this day, right? Our protocols are still used in treating cancer today. And I told my daughter that story, and both stories, and she said, I like that woman who didn't stop. And that's why Marie Curie became the first hero in Heroes for My Daughter.
And she wouldn't take from the government her husband's pension. She earned her own way.
I love that.
Yeah,
At the
great
Sorbonne.
point you made.
I know.
Right.
I love that detail.
Oscar, Tony, Emmy, Grammy Award winner. You mentioned Audrey Hepburn. You did not select her for these reasons, nor did you select her for her looks. Tell the audience why Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah, no, Audrey Hepburn, you know, people look at her, oh, I love her movies. I love Breakfast at Tiffany's. And I said, that's not why she's in the book. I know she's a beautiful woman, but she was someone who was starving when she was younger. She used to actually eat flowers because she had no food. And when she became the world's most famous actress, she went to UNICEF. They didn't come to her, she went to them. Wow. Okay, and that to me was the difference. Right now, when someone gets famous, everyone approaches them and says, can you help us, can you do for us? She said, I never forget where I came from. And to me, that alone is the great lesson. And it was her, it was Audrey Hepburn, who was one of the first people into Bosnia, before Clinton and before everyone else was going there. It was Audrey Hepburn who brought the attention there because she would go there and hug these kids. And in fact, one of the UNICEF people said, I never saw anything like it. She would go up and hug these kids, these lepers, these kids who were starving, and take to them immediately. And it was she who brought that spotlight and shined it on these details. How could I not put her as a hero for my daughter?
Helen Keller, the first deaf and blind person to graduate college.
Yeah.
Tell us about this selection.
Yeah, you know, I debated Helen Keller. I knew I wanted to do Helen Keller and Anne Sullivan. And I didn't know whether I should do them both. And they both have incredible stories. Helen Keller is, of course, we know the story. A girl who's blind and she's deaf, and everyone says give up on her. Put her in an institution and give up on her. She's never going to amount to anything. And she's basically taken care of by this woman, Anne Sullivan, who finds her lucky enough to have this teacher. Teachers have a very important place in my heart. And one of the stories actually that's not in the book, I'll tell you right now about Anne Sullivan, is Anne Sullivan. We all know the story. You know, she used to write into Helen Keller's palm and spell out words to her and write water and write these things. And what I love is, you know, eventually Helen Keller learned how to speak. She would put her hand on Anne Sullivan's lips and on her mouth and on her throat, and she would feel those words, feel the vibrations. And that's how she learned to speak. She said, I want to learn how to speak. And within a couple days, she learned how to say her first sentence, which is, I am not dumb now. And I just love that. What I love about Anne Sullivan, though, this is the other half of the story, is Anne Sullivan, while she was teaching Helen Keller how to do this, Helen Keller wasn't supposed to go to college. They said, and the dean said when she applied to Radcliffe College, he said, you know what, just don't apply this year. It's going to be too hard for you. And Helen Keller, actually the first year, listened to him and didn't apply. And then the next year she said, you know what, I'm going to go. I want to go. And when she was there were no Braille books, so Anne Sullivan used to have to write in her hands every different book that she had. And what I didn't know, this amazing part of the story, is that Anne Sullivan actually had eye problems too. And she went to her doctor and said, and her doctor said to her, if you keep writing in this woman's hand every day, you're going to risk going blind yourself. And Anne Sullivan said, I don't care. I want to help this girl. And not only did Helen Keller graduate from Radcliffe College, she graduated cum laude with honors, right? I mean, incredible story. Goes on to write multiple books. This girl who amounts to nothing changes the world and in the process, and changes how we deal with people with disabilities. Both of them heroes, of course.
And one thing you point out is no pessimism.
Yeah, no, that's what I love, you know,
Yeah.
and I think it's important. I think we live in a world today where we always want to find what's at fault and what's bad and what's wrong. And to me, no pity, no pessimism, just honest to God, a miracle.
Next person is a 25-time Emmy Award winner. That's unbelievable. But that's, again, not why she's in the book. Carol Burnett, tell us about The Secret Loan.
Carol Burnett, I love humor. I love that humor, when humor is a powerful force. And we all like to laugh at Carol Burnett and say she was funny. But what I think Carol Burnett's real power of is when you hear where she comes from. And when she came, really had no money, no start, wanted to go to make it in the big city like everyone else, and she got a secret loan from a secret admirer who basically said, take this money, and here are the strict things you have to do. 1, you have to pay it back within a certain time period. 2, you have to never reveal who I am. And 3, most important, you have to help other people. That is what I love about it. And sure enough, true to her word, Carol Burnett pays back the loan. To this day, no one knows who gave her the money. And she goes on and obviously helps people in college to get scholarships who also want to study and be actors. She also, Vicki Lawrence, who everyone knows from the Carol Burnett show, oh, she's a funny lady. Carol Burnett got a letter from her and heard the story of Vicki Lawrence, this young girl who said, I'm funny and you're my hero. And Carol Burnett said, why don't you come in, and went to see her and gave her shot and helped her. And that's how Vicki Lawrence got her shot, paying back and never forgetting where she came from. That is a key lesson for my daughter, right? Is to never, ever forget not just where you came from, but how you got there.
So let's go back in history and look at the wife and mother of 2 former presidents, Abigail Adams, who is, as you call, our founding mother.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone ever used the term before.
Never heard it before.
And I
thought
made
that
it
was
up.
good.
I appreciate it. It was, people always talk about the founding fathers, and to me, they were founding mothers. And I thought Abigail Adams, when you read the letters that she wrote to John Adams, you don't just see husband and wife in love. What you see is a woman arguing for fights, to fight, to stick up for yourself, for freedom, for equality. She's arguing for other people's rights, for gender rights, for slaves' rights. She's picking these fights decades before we ever deal with them, is this woman. She goes in her kitchen and she's using her fireplace to melt down spoons so that we can have ammunition. And she turns her house into its own little hospital to treat other soldiers. This is the reason why we win the Revolutionary War. I'm sorry. I know we have the founding fathers, but it's because of those founding mothers as well. She's as strong as can be. I wish it was actually one of the few things I regretted about the book. Every page in Heroes for My Daughter is 1 page long. The stories are always 1 page long. They show the hero on 1 page, and then they tell the 1-page story in the other. And what I really wanted to do is to show these letters. And I just thought, when you read these letters, I remember I was reading them with my own wife. And my wife was going, I'm so inspired now. I want to go out and do things today because of what Abigail Adams did all those years ago.
Maybe sounds cliche, but I'll say my mother was the very first one. She had a lot of profound sadness in her life. She was lost her mom when she was 18 and a half months old. Her dad left her. She lost a son to brain cancer at 13. She was a widow at 50. Yet with all that sadness that she had, she always kept her love of life and joy. She always made people feel comfortable, always loving. I always felt safe and warm with her, and she's my best friend. So that's definitely my hero. The second is I thought of Mother Teresa. Ever since I was little, I thought she was a wonderful woman. She was everyday person who found her calling, and what she always said was all people need is love and a smile. As simple as that. My third was Krista McAuliffe. Again, an everyday person, a teacher, very important person that told you to reach for the stars, and I think that's a wonderful thing for my daughter to live up to. She did report on her too.
In 2008, when he swam the 100 fly, which is probably a video that my daughters and I have watched together. They're swimmers at least 100 times. That to me is the greatest illustration of never give up. When he comes off of that 15-meter wall in 7th place, and he just flies down that lane. And even at the very end, when Cabbage is stretching for the finish, and for all intents and purposes, he's done with the race, and Phelps takes that one more arm surge and beats him by 1/100th of a second. It's just a great moment, and that's why we watch it. But aside from the national figures, I think of local figures. And I like them to be around people that serve their community and are good people, are honest people, are caring people, and help other people. And so there's two people that I'm around all the time that my daughters know very well, and that I would hope they aspire to be like. And one is Diane Sullivan, who I work with at the law school, who my daughters know very well, who is just an intelligent, smart person who probably has the biggest heart of anybody that I've ever met, and who in the face of all types of adversity always just tries to make the right decision. And so she is definitely someone that I would choose as a hero for them. And the other local person is actually the superintendent of our public schools right now, Dr. Marinelle McGrath, who my daughters do know, who, much like Diane, I guess my reasons are sort of the same, that in the face of what I consider great obstacles and being faced with making decisions that are really tough and sometimes go against the grain, she makes them with an eye towards what's best for the kids, even though it's a really hard decision to make, and it would have been easy to wait on the decision or make a different decision. She always thinks about what's best for those kids because that's her job, and she always makes that hard decision when she has to. And I would like them to aspire to people like that.
I hope eventually that her brother would be her hero. A lot of the tasks that most of us take for granted takes a lot of effort for him to master or even do. So I'd like her to recognize that for some people things don't come as easily as it does for others.
In my office up on the wall for 20 plus years, I've had this quote: never give in, never give in, never, 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 and nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in, except to convictions of honor and good sense, end quote. But you have added something. You have enemies, good. That means you've stood for something sometime in your life. Winston Churchill. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's it is, Winston Churchill was one of the hardest ones in the entire book to write. You know why? Because his words were so much always better than mine. I had 50 quotes for the guy. I mean, right? You have enemies in your life, good. I just wanted to put that on his page. I'm like, I'm done. And it was so hard. You know, I'm trying to describe his impact and what his words did to inspire all these people in London. The bombs are falling from the sky, literally coming down, and here he is trying to inspire them. And I can use the words and say he was inspiring them. But you know what? Sometimes as a novelist, I learned this, and when as a writer, I know this. Sometimes you have to shut up. Sometimes you have to get out of your own way and shut up and let the person tell their story. And it's why almost every person in this book has one quote, and Winston Churchill has two. because you got to get out of his way and shut up. And I just love that he says that. And I think it is important, right? We always want to.
Oh, so important.
You have to have enemies. And I always say to my daughter, you know, make the right enemies in your life.
Eleanor Roosevelt, tell us the story when she goes to the tent city.
Yeah, so Eleanor Roosevelt, you know, is, again, so many things you can point out, right? There's so many ways that she inspires people. If I ask 10 women, give me your heroes, Eleanor Roosevelt is on 9 out of 10 people's lists for
That's
women.
correct.
It just is, she's just one of those people. And everyone has them for different reasons. Some people say, you know what, she didn't apologize for how she looked. She didn't apologize for who she was. You know, they all have different reasons. And I couldn't find one story. I was like, I want the one moment that shows all those things, that shows really what this great woman was. And it was, you know, this great moment after World War I. All these soldiers were picketing and had opened a tent city in Washington, D.C., saying that they wanted money for their payments for their pensions as being soldiers, and the government hadn't paid the money that they had promised them. And before FDR was elected, they were actually, the soldiers, in the tent cities, they sent guns and people with bayonets, and they said, you know, we're going to get people out of these tent cities and fight them. When the tent cities come up again, when FDR is elected, instead of sending people with guns or sending, you know, people to fight and get rid of these guys, he sends his wife. And he sends her alone. He sends Eleanor Roosevelt into this tent city. And rather than having a gun or a battle or, you know, even words, she goes around, brings coffee, and says, let me hear what you're talking about. Tell me your problems. And she listens. She uses the most potent weapon of all, her 2 ears, right? It is one we always forget, right? Men put up their fists, and women open up their ears. And you know what? I hate to say the cliches are sometimes true, but we need to learn from that. We need to learn better. This is one of those ones that I put Eleanor Roosevelt in Heroes for my son too. It was one of the few people repeat it because I was like, this is a lesson we all need to know. Right. And she went and listened. And she listened to what they said. And it was years later that we got the GI Bill because of what she put down to help these people after they fought and you know, who've given this amazing service to our country because of the things that she put forward. She went, and she was the one who talked about race issues. She's the one who talked about all these amazing things about equality for women, for, African Americans. It was Eleanor Roosevelt, who everyone said, shut up and stop talking, lady, who would never stop talking. And that is a good hero to me.
Explain how the Three Stooges end up in the book.
Oh, yeah. So this is the one. The Three Stooges, I will tell you, are in this book. And my wife said to me, do not put the Three Stooges in this book, please. She said, I hate the Three Stooges.
Yeah, right. It's a guy thing.
I know it's a guy thing. I got it. I understand most women hate the Three Stooges, and I can live with that. And I said, did you hear the story about Adolf Hitler, though? And she said, what? I threw down the word Adolf Hitler, right? Now she's got to listen.
Right.
And it was the Three Stooges. This is as World War II was starting. And at the time, the government actually didn't want Hollywood making films about Adolf Hitler, about Germany, because they were worried they were going to be propaganda. So they asked them, please don't make these movies about it because it's just going to incite people. It's going to be very emotional. We don't want propaganda. And you know what? Almost every Hollywood studio listened. They all listened, except for these three guys named Moe and Larry and Curly. It was the Three Stooges who were the first ones to parody Adolf Hitler on film. And they did it nearly 9 months before Charlie Chaplin did it in The Great Dictator, even though Chaplin usually gets the credit. And what I love about it is that they did it, and this is just incredible to me, they did it nearly 2 years before Pearl Harbor. Just think about that a moment. Nearly 2 years before Pearl Harbor, these guys are making fun of Hitler. And when you watch, you can look on YouTube. It's called You Nazi Spy, okay, is how they do it. When you look it up and you watch the video, they're actually talking not just about what happens at Malta, but they talk about a concentrated camp. That's what they call it, not a concentration camp, a concentrated camp. Nearly 2 years before Pearl Harbor, the Three Stooges are talking about this. They knew. People knew what was going on. And we can rewrite history all we want and say nobody knew, nobody knew. They had it on film talking about it at the time, nearly 2 years before Pearl Harbor. And it was these Three Stooges who actually stood up to the bully. And that's the lesson I want for my daughter, is sometimes you have to stand up to the bully. And it's a vital one. In fact, to this day, when you look and you see Moe from Moe, Larry, and Curly, when they ask what his favorite episode he ever did was, what their favorite short was, it was the one where they made fun of Hitler. It was these three Jews who stood up to the bully who had the biggest impact.
Susan Anthony, Failure is Impossible. Was she heard?
Susan B. Anthony may be one of my favorite heroes in this whole book. And you know why? It's because Susan B. Anthony has been reduced to this lady on a coin right? That's what it is. And people go, oh, Susan, you know, if you said you were putting together a book of famous female heroes, baby, oh, you got to put Susan B. Anthony. You know, and you know why? Nobody knows why, right? They know she had something to do with voting. She's powerful. She's some. But here's what I love, is she comes alive in this book to me, and she came alive to me when I was researching this book. Susan B. Anthony goes to vote, and this is a time when women don't have the right to vote, and she goes to vote, and they say, listen, you can't vote, you're a woman. And Susan B. Anthony says, screw you, I'm voting. Here's what the Constitution says. Here's the, you know, she literally goes and points out the clause that says everyone has, you know, equal protection, and she actually convinces the poll workers to let her vote, and she casts a ballot. And you know what? That's against the law. And they say that's against the law. You're going to be arrested for that. And they bring her down and they arrest her and they fine her for breaking the law. Women aren't allowed to vote. And she says, you know what? Screw you. I'm never. And they fine her. And they say, you have to come into the court and we're going to have this big trial for you. It's going to be, you know, you're going to see how wrong you were, lady. And Susan B. Anthony says, I'm not paying to go there. I won't even give you the money to get on the trolley to get down to the courthouse. So the police actually pay the trolley money. She won't give them $1. And she gets down to the court, and the judge basically, you know, it's this totally kind of rigged trial. The judge instructs the jury and says, find her guilty. She's, you know, it's terrible. And now she's supposed to be defeated, right? And he purposely doesn't grant her an appeal because he doesn't want her to have the power to appeal it. So he basically, you know, plays around with the legal system so she doesn't do that. So what she does, and now she's supposed to be screwed at this point, right? Mm-hmm. Susan B. Anthony I love this, is she basically gets transcripts of the entire trial and gets copies of them and then mails them to every newspaper she can find, everywhere. You know, pre-internet. This isn't like you go out and you start a website. Susan B. Anthony says, you know what? Watch what I can do. Let me show you the power of one person. And every time she can have anyone listen to her about equal rights and women voting, she is there talking about it. She is there thumping. And she dies before they pass the Women's Right to Vote Act. And so people would say, wow, her life was a failure, right? She didn't succeed. It didn't happen. But when they finally pass it, it is called the Susan B. Anthony Act.
I'd like to preface this by saying that Kelly is my daughter by circumstance and love, as her mom passed away when she was 13 and she came to live with me through college. So I have become her quasi-mom. So my three heroes for my daughter would be Abraham Lincoln, because I find that he has the traits of strength and gentleness. He was able to keep a country together at his own personal stake. He was empathetic, but he was also very strong when it came to rules and following those rules. My second choice would be my mother, Kelly's grandmother, because my mother was able to keep our family together from the time I was 6 when my dad was struck with multiple sclerosis, and she had 5 children, all under the age of 5 when he was taken ill. She worked part-time. She raised all of us, took care of my dad, and ran a household. And I found her to be a woman of strength, which is very important to me, of great love for her family, and never bowed or brought down by her circumstances, never complained, just proceeded with her life. Enjoyed life to the fullest, but never gave up. And my last choice for Kelly would be her mom. Her mom passed when Kelly was 13. She was our middle child. She is a woman of great compassion and love, and she was our balancing act in the family. She was the middle child, so she was able to sort of see both sides of a coin and find a middle road to bring everybody together. And those are great traits that I'm beginning to see in Kelly as well. And I think had Kelly gotten to know her mother later in life, she'd have been a great role model and hero for Kelly.
She has always been my guiding light throughout my life, and she still is today, 2 years after she left us. Her love for everyone, irrespective of who you are, has really impacted me all throughout my life. Her caring for everyone doesn't matter. She could put her life in danger, but she would be out helping people, whether it is neighborhood or anyone she doesn't know. In fact, in my town where I grew up, she's known as a neighborhood mom. Neighbors always drop by to talk to her. They would leave their kids. For my daughter's first birthday, there were 40 people, even though my daughter was born here and lived here. She also taught me to be persistent. Do not give up. I came to this country with $8 in hand. I never gave up on my life. I never worried. I just worked hard. She always says, every power is within you. You keep smiling and you will conquer the world. It doesn't matter. Every day is not a sunny day. Today, this is what you have. Tomorrow, things could be different. Both my daughters, I want to follow her footsteps because I have followed her, and 2 years after, I'm still following her.
You know, it's funny, when I gave, I remember when I gave my daughter the book, you know, she doesn't care about Thurgood Marshall, she doesn't care about Rosa Parks, she cares about who she knows, she cares about funny women, she loves Lucy, she loves Lucille Ball. And I remember, it's called Heroes for My Daughter, I'm handing it to my daughter, it's a big moment, and I'm waiting to see who she's going to pick. She picked Lucille Ball first, and I love Lucille Ball, and the reason she's in the book is not because she's funny. My daughter had seen her on that conveyor belt episode where the chocolate's coming and she's eating the chocolate. But the
Baking the bread in the oven even tops that
right,
one.
there was great
ahead.
ones. Harper Marx is one of my favorites, but one of the ones that what I love is that people don't know how Lucille Ball got there. Right, the hard work it took to get there, to be this incredible woman in business. She had this grandmother who used to think that happiness was a sin. She used to hang up all the mirrors, used to cover the mirrors in their in every room in their house except the bathroom, because she thought they led to vanity. And Lucille Ball learned to make funny faces by looking at her reflection in trolley car windows. And to me, you know, it's the great lesson, not just of every episode of I Love Lucy, but of Lucille Ball's life herself. It's that humor can take on anything. And it's that hard work that she, you know, over and over, just not refusing to be put down by her grandmother, by anyone else, and doing what she loved, accepting herself. That's where all these lessons come together, and you really see what it takes to make a great woman. And it's never just one lesson. It's hard work. It's, you know, not stopping. It's never giving up. It's accepting yourself for who you are. It's, you know, again, it's not how you get to be famous. It's how you get to be a great person. And to me, that's far more important than being famous.
And I cannot thank you enough for including Lucille Ball, who was really an inspiration for me as well. I mean, I just love the story, and for you telling us about her performing in front of her pet chicken, Sassafras.
Sassafras. My daughter still, the funny part is my daughter still calls things Sassafras. And I was with my daughter recently, and my daughter now is so obsessed with Lucille Ball because of this book. And so I had to, of course, go buy all these DVDs of Lucy. I said, my daughter's the only woman in the 21st century, only little girl who's watching black and white television. She loves black and white television. So if I've done nothing else right, that's the one.
Well, one thing you did is my mother used to always call me Sassafras, and she died. And now I wish I could talk with her and say, oh, I know where you got it from.
Yeah, no, I know how you feel. My mom passed away 4 years ago from breast cancer. And my mom is one of the last heroes in this book. And I remember when my publisher was shutting down, I was terrified. My second novel hadn't sold as well. I thought this was the end of my career. It's over for me. I'm done. And I called my mom, and I told her how scared I was. And my mom said to me, I'll never forget, she said, I'd love you if you were a garbage man. And she wasn't taking a crack at garbage men. My uncle was a garbage man. She was saying, I don't care if you're the president, the Queen of England, or anything else, Brad, I love you. And to this day, every day that I sit down to write, I say those words to myself. I love you if you were a garbage man, just soaking in my mom's love for me. And every single day, I still hear those words.
It is one of the most powerful sentences in your book.
I appreciate it. It is the one, it's one of the ones when I get down that I open up. You know, I think to me what I love about Heroes for My Daughter is there are people who give it to their young daughters. I read it with my 6-year-old. I read it with my 10-year-old son. And I love that. But then there are people like the Ask Amy columnist said that Heroes for My Son in particular was the best graduation present she saw for graduating high school seniors and graduating college kids. And then there's a pastor who said, you know what, if you don't have kids, buy it for yourself and be inspired every day, which is what I can do with my mother's story. And what I love is, again, it's not anything I did. It's that these heroes speak to all of us at all ages. And I think it's the real power of the book. It has nothing to do with me. It's that these stories are universal. They, the best stories, as we all know, don't just tell us about someone else. They tell us something about ourselves.
That's right. Theodore Roosevelt and the value of chutzpah.
Yeah, no, chutzpah is what it is. Teddy Roosevelt, I don't know if he's ever been called having chutzpah, but in my family, that's what we call it. And Teddy Roosevelt, is a controversial figure, right? Some people say, oh, what I love about him is he's the first guy who wins awards. He wins a Nobel Peace Prize, but he also wins for fighting, right? He wants to win for peace. He wants to win for war. And that's chutzpah. What is also chutzpah, and this is what is not, to me, is not arguable about Teddy Roosevelt, is he's the first environmentalist president. He really is.
You have to tell us about Pelican Island.
Yeah, so Pelican Island here in Florida. Pelican Island, he's here in Florida, and he looks around and sees these birds, and he says, what's it going to take? What's the rule? Is anything stopping me from protecting? He sees all these people are shooting these birds, killing these birds for no reason. They're just, knocking them out of the sky. And he likes this area in Pelican Island. He says, what's preventing me from saying that this should be a wildlife reserve? And one of his aides says, nothing, sir, you're the president. He says, fine, I make it so, right? And I love that. He just declares it right there and founds Pelican Island. Also, the Grand Canyon, all these incredible places, these national parks, acres and acres of national parks, which to me is one of the great legacies that America has. In other countries, we take these vast lands and they belong to the Queen. We build castles. In America, we took so many of these places and we declared them for the public and
Thank
made
goodness.
these national parks, right? I mean, if you go to Yosemite, if you go to Yellowstone, they are one of the great things that America gets right. It's one of the great American creations is the national park system. And Teddy Roosevelt got so much land and claimed so much land for his own just by having really the chutzpah to say, you know what,
That's
I
right.
make it so.
The first lady of song, Ella Fitzgerald.
Yeah, Ella Fitzgerald, we played her songs at my wedding, so that alone gets me points, right? You want to impress your wife, you got to put your wedding song in there. And Ella Fitzgerald, we all love her songs, but again, that doesn't make you a hero.
That's right.
And Ella Fitzgerald, when she was young, had this, again, rough childhood, was abused down in a basement at the time, near the Great Depression, and she had this moment. This is, to me, about the story we were talking about a moment, and
That's
getting
right.
a moment. And she goes to a talent show at the Apollo Theater. And her plan is she's actually not going to sing, she's going to dance. And everyone knows Ella Fitzgerald, this great, amazing voice, but that's not what she's going to do. She wants to dance. She loves to dance. And just as she's about to go out, she realizes that the act that's on before her is going to basically be this group of well-known dancers at the time. And she's like, I can't follow that. They're going to be incredible. Everyone's going to love them. So she changes her mind at the last minute, goes out on stage, and people are literally yelling and throwing stuff at her, saying, this ugly girl, why, she's so ugly, shut up, like, what are you doing? And at this moment where she's panicked, right, she has this moment, and she could do anything, and instead of dancing, she starts to sing. And she starts singing a song that her mother used to sing to her. And as soon as that voice hits the audience, they stop talking, right? They're listening. Not only does she, of course, win the contest, but they give her a standing ovation because they wanted her to perform more. And I think, sometimes in life you're given a moment, but what matters is what you do with it.
There's not one person I could choose to be her hero. I'd like for her to grow into who she is, and the most important thing is that whatever path she chooses, she's happy. But there are a lot of people in her life who I think have great characteristics that hopefully she'll possess someday. Her godmother I chose, Janice Studemeyer, because she's a smart, intelligent, hardworking, strong individual woman. And she sets a really good example for women who are successful and manage to be a mom and work at the same time. Her yaya, her grandmother, is a great influence because she's so patient and kind, and she's just a wonderful person. So there's not one person that could be her hero, but a number of people in our lives that really, I hope, make a good impact and carry on their traits to her as she grows up.
The heroes for my daughters are Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Emma Goldman. These people are heroes for my daughters because they have very strong feminist issues that they consider important to them. And Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony were the embodiment of protest against unjust laws against women. back in actually the 19th century, late 1800s. Emma Goldman brought that forward in right around the turn of the century, when the laws were incredibly strong against women, and also against basically they promoted economic inequality. And I think one of the best examples of why Goldman is so important to both these girls is because the Occupy Wall Street movement recently had someone show up who was dressed as Emma Goldman, who was an anarchist at the time of the turn of the last century. And she was there to say that basically Goldman had appeared in New York City in 1896 and had said to a bunch of unemployed workers, around 3,000 of them, look at the palaces of the rich over there and go to those rich people and say, I want a job. And if they won't give you a job, say, I want bread. And if they won't give you bread, take the bread. So those are three examples of heroes for my daughters, and I think they represent what's best about these girls, that they want to go out there and be active in seeking more rights for both women and for people who are economically disenfranchised.
There are a number of people who I obviously admire very much and always have, and the rest of the world does as well. For example, Eleanor Roosevelt. I was told by Justice William O. Douglas, as a matter of fact, that the person who had the biggest FBI file was Eleanor Roosevelt. They were so concerned about all the things that she was doing, and they were all good, wonderful things, that they had a file that was inches and inches and inches thick. I thought she was an amazing woman. I had a cousin, a first cousin, and she was probably one of the loveliest women you would ever hope to find. Her home was always crowded with people because everyone knew that they were always welcome in her house. Anything that you ever wanted, she would do for you. She was an astonishing lady and would certainly be a hero. I have a great deal of admiration, and I would think my daughters might too, for people such as Sean Penn, who've given up his entire life to rectify all the horrors that the earthquake in Haiti caused. And George Clooney, who could have done anything he wanted. He could sit in his villa on Lake Como and just bask in all his riches and fame, and instead he does all these astonishing things, making the world aware of the horrors that are occurring in countries such as Rwanda.
The hardest story in the book for me was the woman who was the paratrooper who went into Yugoslavia, Hannah.
Hannah Senesh, yeah.
Would you tell that story?
Yeah, a very important story. She's one of the few people, well, we talked before about how I overused the word fighter in the book, and I loved using the word fighter. And I changed the word fighter in many entries, and I left it in Hannah Senesh's. And this was basically, obviously, during the time of the Holocaust. And Hannah Senesh actually leaves Yugoslavia and goes back to what is now Israel, and then finds out what's happening. Finds out what's happening with Hitler, and finds out what's happening with the Nazis, and says, my mother still lives there, and I need to go save her. And she becomes part of this British paratrooping troop, and she's the woman that's on there. All these young men, and there's Hannah Senesh, and she parachutes down and makes her way. They're going to help Jewish people who are trying to help the resistance. She's Jewish herself. She knows what it's like to be spit on. She knows what it's like for her teachers to make fun of her. She knows what it's like to be called the dirty Jew. And she goes back to help others, right? She can stay in Israel and she can just live her life out. She can live peacefully. And she says, I got to go help them. She gets captured very quickly. And after she's captured, what they want is they want her radio codes, the British radio codes that they gave her. And if they can get the radio codes from Hannah Senesh, they can crack those codes and listen in on what the Allies are doing. And they say to her, we're going to torture you, and Hannah Senesh won't break. And they say, we're going to bring your mother in, and we're going to kill her, and she won't break. And they punch out her teeth, and she won't break. And they finally say to her, you're going to be executed, and we're going to shoot you if you don't give us these radio codes. And she says, you are never going to get these codes. And she, in fact, said to them, if you're going to shoot me, don't give me the blindfold. If you're going to kill me, you're going to have to look me in the eye. And they raise these guns. This is a girl. This is a young girl. And they raise these guns at Hannah Senesh, and without a blindfold, she looks them, and she takes those bullets and she dies. But to me, she lives on forever.
Golda Meir, how does she become one of a few women to really run a country?
Yeah, you know, Golda Meir was a really tricky one for me. I knew I wanted her in the book. And someone told me the story that she came here to America to raise money and she went back with millions of dollars. And that's a nice story. But I just, you know, to me, just raising money is not enough. And what I found, listen, she was this, you know, really smart girl, worked in, you know, in Israel, and whatever she did, she excelled at, and always, you know, amazing stuff. But what I love is that Golda Meir used to invite foreign leaders to come to her kitchen to talk with her. And at first, when I heard that story, I was like, do I want that story for my daughter, right? That she's somehow like someone in the kitchen? That
No,
Golda
you
Meir, right?
don't.
Right, doesn't, right? And I don't want that story for my
No.
daughter. I knew that. But then it took me a while to realize why she did it. Golda Meir had them come to her kitchen because they would talk to her and they would be on her level, that she would listen, and they would listen and focus on what she was saying because they were away from everything else. And I love that. I love that she took command and took control and didn't care what the rules were or where everyone else said she had to be, and said, we're going to do it on my terms, on my turf, come here, and then we'll talk. And that is a strong woman.
Tell us how a well-told story can change one's life, and I'm talking about Agatha Christie.
Yes, one of my favorite. You know, I've never told this story out loud to anybody. So I put it in the book, and I'm a novelist. I write novels for a living. I write mysteries and thrillers.
Wonderful
And
novels.
I appreciate that. And I love them. And, you know, the dream for every novelist is that you can affect someone's life. Or we know we can entertain, but can you affect someone's life? And Agatha Christie affected mine. And I remember it was one of the first things. I remember going to the library with my grandmother, and she used to say to me when we got to the library, she would say, this section, this is your section. And I used to think she literally meant this was my section. Like, these were my books, and this was the, you know, I thought this was ours.
Right.
And I remember it was there that I found this book. It was called Murder at the Vicarage. And to this day, it was by Agatha Christie. To this day, I have no idea what a vicarage is. I don't want to know. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. But all I remember is opening that book, and on those first pages in those early chapters, there it was. Oh my God, there it is, a dead body. There was a dead body, and oh my gosh, how did it happen? Where did it happen? Who killed that person? And again, the most important question of all, a question that would affect me the rest of my life, who done it? Right? Who done it in that moment? It was a dead body, who done it? And to this day, I write mysteries, I write thrillers, and everyone always, once again, say that they love this famous, you know, great writer and these, you know, artsy-fartsy writers. But you know what? It's Agatha Christie who told me and influenced me, and I think deserves amazing credit for what she has done to entertain so many people and to tell these amazing stories. And she changed my life. I owe her big.
Dolly Parton and the Imagination Library.
Dolly Parton was actually, her and her organization were really helpful in putting this book together. And people know Dolly. People always say, Dolly Parton, a country singer, you put her in there?
Yeah.
And people forget where Dolly Parton came from. And it's as you've heard me talk so far, that's a vital lesson for me, not forgetting where you come from. And Dolly Parton grew up in the foothills of Tennessee, and, you know, in a one-room shack. You can't even describe it as big. It was a shack. And she learns to write music, becomes one of the most famous, wealthy, successful songwriters in the world. Okay, incredible story, that's great. And that's fine, but that doesn't make you anything. That just means you get money. What I love is after she has all this fame, she goes back to the foothills of Tennessee where she grew up, and she buys that plot of land where she grew up and where her one-room shack used to be. And at this point, Dolly Parton can put a giant mansion on there. She has enough money to do it, right? She can put whatever she wants on there. But instead, what Dolly Parton does, and yet she rebuilds the shack. She, you know, it has modern amenities, but it's still small, still tiny, still in the same footprint. And she goes there when she wants to relax and maybe write. That's where she'll retreat to. And to me, again, one of the greatest lessons we'll ever hear in our lives, which is never forget where you come from. And I love her quote in there, which says, you know, we all want to have the rainbows, but to get the rainbows, you got to put up with the rain. And you know, every time I see the rain outside, and every time something goes bad, I try to think of that. That to me is good inspiration.
Our last hero that we're going to talk about today. How does a woman, a young woman with polio, end up being the fastest woman on earth, really?
Wilma Rudolph was this little girl who had polio. They said she's never going to walk again, and she was a runner, right? And we all know for runners, how you start out of those starting blocks is so important to how you finish the race, right? It's so important how quickly you get out of those starting blocks. Wilma Rudolph gets out slow, polio. They say she'll never walk. She has to take a bus for miles to go see the doctors, and her mother would ride the bus with her. And eventually they take, I think she's 9 years old, they finally take the braces. They have these giant metal braces on her legs. They finally take them off. And Wilma Rudolph starts to run. And she really starts to run. And not only does she start to run, but she's faster than anyone. And she wins a bronze medal in the Olympics. And she goes for the next Olympics and she wins 3 gold medals. The only person at that Olympics to win female to win 3 gold medals at that time. Incredible. So I love this story because, yes, it's important how you take off out of the starting blocks, but it is no indication to how you will finish.
Throughout the hour, we have talked about your personal heroes, your grandmother, your mother. Any other final comments about your personal heroes?
Well, I do have to tell you one, because we didn't talk about her. It is my wife. And my wife, Corey, is, I owe this book to her for many reasons, and not just because I couldn't have my daughter without her. I owe her for, this book. She knows she's the last hero in here. And it says, last hero, your mom. And my wife, when she was just a little girl living in South Florida, there was basically a hurricane had hit, and this Category 5 hurricane had hit, and she was, I think she was in 5th grade, and she started a can drive. She started first giving her own canned goods to help the hurricane victims, and then she basically said, you know what, she was smart, my wife was smart, and she said, you know what, if I get more people, we can help more people. So she started a whole school-wide food drive. And I love that story about my wife, and I love that she helped those people, but that's not why she's a hero to me. My wife says one of her favorite expressions is that people don't change, and she's wrong about that, because my wife changed me. When she met me, I was this little loudmouth New Yorker who, she taught me the value of being smart and the value of hard work and the value of what books can bring you. She gave me all those things, and she changed me.
What do you conclude about women?
Oh boy, you just asked me the hardest question. I just told you the stories of all these heroes, but if you ask me what I know about women, sometimes I feel like it'll fill a thimble. The hard part is, what I do know is they're unstoppable. And they are unstoppable as anyone else in this world. And I'm talking about men, women, anyone. I don't care what you've been given. I mean, I can tell you, don't give up. I can tell you, keep reaching. I can tell you, chase your dreams and you'll find them. I can give you every cliche that's out there. But in these heroes is the proof. In these women is the proof to my daughter that it's possible. And as I said, these are not the stories of famous people. They're what we're capable, all of us, capable of in our very best days. They are the proof positive that ordinary people change the world.
An incredible list of remarkable individuals. We want to thank Brad for compiling and sharing them with us. In the past, women have been trained to speak softly and carry a lipstick. Those days are over, according to Congresswoman, defense attorney, and leader of the women's rights movement, Bella Abzug. Those of you with daughters and sons, take time, talk with them, find out what kind of person they want to be, and help guide them to their goal. So until next time, in the words of Roberto Clemente, if you have a chance to accomplish something that will make things better for people coming behind you, and you don't do that, you are wasting your time on this earth. So until next time, you be well. Thanks for joining us.